Today we're talking compact luxury SUVs that promise panache in return for a chunky dollop of cash. Few have mastered this brief better over the years than the Mercedes GLC. Merc's biggest seller has seduced a legion of fans willing to spend over 50 grand on something no bigger than a Honda CR-V. And this is the new one. It might not look that different, but it's actually an all-new generation with a whole raft of new gadgets and gizmos. And frankly, it needs them because there's a new luxury player in town that's been snaffling all the awards, including our own fabled Edmunds Top Rated. The Genesis GV70 is a couple of years old now, but it still sits atop our rankings. So, can the new GLC steal its crown?
To answer that question, we're diving into the famous Edmunds rating, the product of our exhaustive testing process. In this film, we'll give you the overview, but if you want all the details, head to edmunds.com or click on the links.
And now, without further ado, let's get on with it. So inside is where the cars differ most and probably the bit that you care about most too. This GLC follows now traditional Mercedes theme of having this curvaceous screen which houses all the major controls and is of course touch sensitive. Then you've got a separate screen right here in front of the driver. All of this works really well and it's super easy to use, but what works less well are these haptic controls here on the steering wheel. You have to kind of slide your thumb up and down to control the volume. Doesn't work well in a Volkswagen. Doesn't work well in a Mercedes. What do we think of this styling? Well, of course you can trim your GLC to match your taste. Me, I'm not a big fan of the red seats and this pinstripe effect here on the fascia. I had pinstripe jeans back in the 80s and frankly, they weren't cool then. Let's swap to the Genesis, and as you can see, it's got a very different vibe. It's a bit sort of junior Bentley. They're trying very hard to create a luxury ambience, and to be honest, I think they've just about pulled it off, even if I'm still not a big fan of the red or the optional carbon fibre. The other thing that's very different in here is how you control everything. This screen, which looks a bit tacked on, is touch sensitive, but as you can see, it's something of a reach. But you have an alternative. You have this little rotary knob down here, which is a bit like what BMW uses, that you can turn and push, and also has a little kind of touchy thing on top. I prefer the Merc system, but it's something of a personal choice. Mercedes spends a ton of money on R&D, and when you start to play with the infotainment system, you can see that it's money well spent. It takes a little bit of learning, there's quite a lot of depth to it, but there's tons of functionality, and this navigation system is probably the best we've ever used. And if you want to use Apple CarPlay, it's wireless and beautifully integrated. There's also a ton of active safety systems, and we're particularly big fans of this camera system which helps you park. Another big thing I should call out as a bit of an audiophile myself, this Baumeister system, which is an option in the GLC, is quite superb. The 3D sound processing, brilliant. You also have to pay extra for an upgraded audio system here in the Genesis. In this case, a 16-speaker Lexicon affair that's good, but not quite as good as the Burmeister. We think it's worth paying extra for that options package though, because it also includes some useful camera and safety technology. Right, let's talk about an irritation. If you want to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in the Genesis, it's not wireless, so you have to grab an old-fashioned cable and plug it in. First world problem? Absolutely, but hey, this is supposed to be luxury. Welcome to the backseat of the GLC, where everything is pretty much as you'd expect. A couple of USB-C ports, a couple of air vents, a bit of funky LED lighting, and a few more speakers for the Baumeister. Space, well, it's okay. I'm 6'4", this is set up for me, and there is room. But of course, remember that both of these vehicles are quite compact, and if you really want lots of space, there are plenty of alternatives which are a lot bigger for around 50 grand. Rear seat of the GV70, well, in terms of space, it's pretty similar to GLC, but you do have a few more gadgets. You've got controls here for the climate control, and a function I particularly like, a proper plug socket here for charging something like a laptop. You can also control the front passenger seat using these switches here, which would no doubt delight my kids. What else to call out? Well, how about this? You can pull a handle and recline the rear seat. Can't do that in the Merc. Let's talk cargo. And if we're honest about it, neither of these vehicles is overburdened with luggage capacity, because frankly, if you're hauling big stuff lots of the time, then a compact luxury SUV probably isn't for you. Having said that, if you're a normal family off for a week away, then there should be room in either of these for your luggage, which is, as you can tell, extremely heavy. Both of them have an adequate amount of oddment storage inside, enough for your typical knickknacks, but again, they're not minivans. Whichever the driving mode you're in, this GLC is just a nice car to drive. It's not overtly sporting like a Macan, but everything is beautifully judged. The steering is responsive, nicely weighted, the brakes are smooth, and this engine is an absolute gem. Honestly, we think this is the best 4-cylinder motor we've ever driven, which is praise indeed. And it's so good in part because it has a 48-volt system. Now, without getting too geeky on you, what that means is you get a bit of electrical oomph to fill in some of the gaps, which helps it feel both smoother, more responsive, and ultimately a bit faster than perhaps it looks on paper. Let's start by talking engines, because this is the biggest difference between the two. This Genesis has a 3.5 litre turbo V6, which is yours for the same price as the 4-pot in the Mercedes. Now, Genesis also offers a 2.5 litre, but in our experience, it's much worth paying that little bit extra for the 3.5, which is both smoother and more powerful. Now, it doesn't have the fancy electric system of the Mercedes, but it's still very responsive with a really nice kind of shove in the mid-range. Sounds good too. Overall, this is a smooth, composed, relaxed drive, and if you play with the different modes, you can increase the weight of the steering and make the whole thing feel a bit more sporty according to your taste.
Our numbers from the test track confirmed these impressions. The Mercedes achieved 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds, and a quarter mile in 14.4 seconds at 93.4 miles an hour. That's pretty much on a par with the 2.5 litre GV70, but a chunk slower than the 3.5, and in the real world, you can really feel that difference. The Merc stops better though, measuring 60 to 0 in 106 feet, 14 feet less than the GV70s. It also has a little more ultimate grip, as our skid pad data shows.
Not only does the GLC drive well, it's also very comfortable on the road. The ride quality is good, very soothing, and it is almost eerily quiet in here, thanks in part to the dual pane glass that helps to cut down on road noise. These seats are comfortable too, but unlike the Genesis, they don't have perforation and they don't have ventilation. So on a hot California day, it might get a bit clammy. One of the biggest plus points about the GV70 is just how refined it is. The ride is wonderfully smooth and composed, and it is exceptionally quiet in here, helped, like the Mercedes, by the introduction of dual pane glass. I should also call out these seats, which are some of the best on the market. They offer plenty of adjustment, there's a great massage function, and they're also heated and ventilated. On this model, you even get a heated steering wheel, great for those cold mornings, or if you're a fan of sweaty palms.
The Mercedes feels well built and generally uses premium materials. At around $4,500, the Pinnacle Options Pack is pricey, but worth it for the extra cameras, improved navigation, and awesome Burmeister audio. We're less convinced by the AMG line package fitted to our car, unless of course you're determined to look sporty. Genesis is still establishing itself as a luxury alternative, and that shows in the value it offers. The GV70 sets the class standard for features, build, and warranty. A 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, 3 years free maintenance, and 5 years roadside assistance provide a level of reassurance Mercedes can't, or perhaps won't, match. This is where the Merc's clever hybrid system pays off. The GLC managed 27.9 miles per gallon on our dedicated loop in Southern California. That's 2.5 mpg better than the 2.5 litre GV70 and 7.7 better than the 3.5 litre, which, to be fair, was tested in unusually heavy traffic. Whichever way you dress it up, that's a big win for Mercedes.
So this is a tough call, and honestly one of the tightest head-to-heads we've ever had. Remember, in this video we've given you the overview, but if you'd want to dig into the nitty-gritty, see all the test numbers and the individual scores, click on the link that's floating around me somewhere, or head directly to the Edmunds site. Ultimately, of course, this largely comes down to personal choice. This new Merc has a terrific engine, better fuel economy, and generally speaking, more intuitive controls. But that Genesis has more character, more oomph, and is undeniably a better value in almost every way. Put simply, you just get more for your money. In our final analysis, we awarded the Genesis GV70 a score of 8.3 and the GLC a score of 8.0. And so the Genesis retains its crown and it continues to sit atop our famous rankings. Just
If you want more details on this and which trims we'd recommend, check out the full review on edmunds.com. And if you have a car to sell, we'll make you a cash offer at edmunds.com/sellmycar.